Hello, this is Eric of Not BIOS, and welcome to part 3 of a multi-part series of the history of AMD, Advanced Micro Devices. Now, AMD is quite in the financial rut at this time. Let's find out how they get past this. Now let's get started. Since the fusion of the CPU and the graphics all in one, AMD is doing horrible. 2011 all the way to 2015, we're starting off now. AMD is selling CPUs to PlayStation and Xbox at razor slim margins, barely making any sales in desktop or laptop markets, barely holding things together as it stands. The FX processors were simply unlocked processors that ran extremely hot, extremely overclocked, and this was not good. January 2nd, 2015, AMD moves from the New York Stock Exchange to the Nasdaq stock market. June 16, 2015, AMD releases the R9 Fury X GPU, which is part of the 300 series of GPUs. The Fury X was notable for being the first GPU to house high bandwidth memory, HBM. This is a very fast, low-power, compact 3D stacked memory, allowing more compact designs that would otherwise not have been possible. The GPU had a rather high power draw. This issue was shortly rectified after the release of the R9 Nano. The Nano was made with a design that restricted power use to give great performance per watt, while still performing close to the Fury X, but using a fair bit less power to do so. Due to the high price of HBM memory, these cards were not a value option. They were, however, completely unique designs, and nothing so small in size could match its performance. January 14, 2016, AMD releases its first ARM server processor, the Opteron A1100 series. This processor was greatly delayed from its expected ship date, mid-2014. These CPUs are built with the ARM Cortex A57 cores with added 64-bit instructions. These ARM-based processors were meant to be low-power, cost-effective solutions using open-source software and ranged in 4 to 8 cores. These CPUs did not sell well. Part of the issue was ARM was not a recognized item in the server market, and the performance did not quite meet server demands. April 2016, in a deal worth $293 million, Advanced Micro Devices licensed technology to make x86 server SoCs to a China partner. This license would be for a design of a not yet released first generation design of a CPU named Zen.
We set a huge goal to increase our instructions per clock by 40% from our previous generation at the same energy efficiency. Second, we wanted to build a smart machine, one that is able to sense its environment and adapt to its surroundings and applications so that it continues to get better and better and better over time. Today, I'm absolutely thrilled to tell you we have met or exceeded our goals.
AMD was very short on cash, and the Chinese sought to free themselves from being dependent on foreign technologies for their servers. AMD had been losing money with no sign of breaking even. This was a deal that AMD needed. June 29, 2016, the 400 series of graphics cards were released with amazing price to performance, with the mid-range 480 coming out at only $199. These cards offered more memory for the price as well as better value than competing solutions. November 10, 2016, Sony released the PlayStation 4 Pro using AMD's 8-core Jaguar CPU and a custom Radeon GPU that ran at 4.2 teraflops of processing power. March 2, 2017, AMD released a new high-performance CPU. It would be a giant leap beyond the generations before it. This new CPU was codenamed Zen. Let's watch Lisa Su's Zen announcement.
I'm extremely pleased to show you for the first time the name of our new CPU.
AMD really needed Ryzen to succeed. They gave everything they could. If it didn't succeed, I don't know if we'd have an AMD right now. Ryzen was built on the 14 nanometer process. The first release had 8 cores and 16 threads. They were a real hit with consumers and were deemed a return to competition for advanced micro devices, with its 52% performance increase over its previous generation of CPUs, codenamed Bulldozer. April 18, 2017, the 500 series was released, with not nearly as much fanfare as the previous generation. This was a re-release of the 400 series with higher clock speeds. NVIDIA was slowly catching up price to performance wise. June 20th, 2017, the EPYC Naples server CPU was released based on the Zen cores with up to 32 cores and 64 threads. This CPU was competitive in the server market. August 10th, 2017, the Threadripper CPU was released starting at 8 cores, 16 threads, all the way up to 16 cores, 32 threads. What began as engineers building something they wanted to see became something AMD chose to bring to the market. It became a hit with enthusiasts seeking high performance without spending a huge amount of money on a server. August 14, 2017, the Radeon RX Vega 64 was released, followed by the slightly slower Vega 56 2 weeks later. These cards were a compute powerhouse, but it wasn't the gaming card that many had hoped for. The power draw was quite high, but the performance for miners of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies was simply amazing, and the compute performance was valuable in the server market for speeding up complex computational tasks. November 7th, 2017, the Xbox One X was released with AMD customized Jaguar Evolved as well as a custom AMD Polaris GPU at 6 teraflops of processing power. The Ryzen processors were out by this time, but with a large cost factor, Jaguar was the more sensible option. November 8th, 2017, Raja Koduri resigned from AMD. He was in charge of the Radeon Technology Group, RTG. He'd go on to be hired by Intel and taking charge of Intel's own graphics division. He wanted to push the limits, and he likely felt he could not do this. Intel at this time was on the hunt for talent to build their own discrete graphics card for the server, entry, and gaming market. January 7, 2018, Intel released a product teaming up with AMD. This product was announced on November 6, 2017. Many people were shocked in disbelief that the rivals would work together. AMD had a fast GPU, Intel had the CPU, with a new interconnect to bind the two together. AMD provided 2 custom low-power Vega mobile GPU designs to be used with Intel Kaby Lake G systems. February 12, 2018, the Ryzen APU was released. AMD for years had reasonable integrated graphics, but this time they had the CPU powerhouse as well. These APUs performed great. If you wanted an all-in-one solution at an affordable price, then these APUs were the clear choice. April 19, 2018, the Zen Plus Ryzen 2000 series was released on the 12 nanometer process with a 3% instruction per clock IPC improvement through faster CPU cache as well as lower memory latency. August 13, 2018, AMD released the Threadripper 2 on the 12 nanometer architecture, the Zen Plus. With 32 cores, 64 threads, this second generation Threadripper was amazing value for its price and performance. On August 27, 2018, GlobalFoundries announced it had cancelled their 7LP process due to a strategy shift to focus on specialized processing instead of leading-edge performance. This lack of 7 nanometer process would hinder AMD's progress since GlobalFoundries was the one producing AMD CPUs. This same day, AMD announced it'd move all its CPU and GPU production to TSMC. November 15, 2018, the Radeon RX 590 would be released, being a refresh of the 580, which was also a refresh of the 480. This card pushed the silicon to its limits. The impressive aspect is how much AMD was able to increase the clock speed from its initial 480 launch years ago. January 29, 2019, AMD stated it had amended its wafer supply agreement with GlobalFoundries. Under the terms of this new deal, the two companies agreed about prices and volumes of wafers that AMD will purchase from the US-based foundry through at least till 2021. If this agreement were not updated, Advanced Micro Devices would be paying more money to GlobalFoundries for every purchase done through any other supplier. February 7, 2019, Radeon Vega 7 for the consumer market was released. And for servers, the MI50 and the MI60, all on 7 nanometers. The compute performance of these cards were amazing, and the memory bandwidth was double that of Vega 64 that was released just the year before. These cards were made with deep learning and high-performance computing in mind. May 1st, 2019 is AMD's 50th anniversary, and in celebration, Advanced Micro Devices released a special edition Ryzen 2700X CPU and a special edition 5700 XT GPU. May 7, 2019, Advanced Micro Devices Incorporated and Cray Incorporated have been awarded a $600 million contract to build the Frontier supercomputer for the U.S. Department of Energy. This supercomputer is expected to be built by 2021 at over 1,500 petaflops of processing power. As of June 2019, the fastest supercomputer after upgrades is Summit, owned by the U.S. Department of Energy, at 148.6 petaflops of performance. This new supercomputer will be at least 10 times greater performance than the fastest supercomputer in the world right now. June 3, 2019, Samsung and AMD partner up in a multi-year strategic agreement for AMD's IP. This IP will allow for ultra-low power, high-performance mobile graphics. Samsung will purchase this IP to make high-performance graphics in their smartphones. July 7, 2019, the Zen 2 Ryzen 3000 CPUs were released with a large performance leap beyond what was out just 1 year before. These CPUs now became more modular with a separate I/O die that housed double the cache of the last generation. The small 7nm CPU dies, now called chiplets, were made at TSMC, while the larger I/O die is made at GlobalFoundries, being that I/O interface components do not scale well when shrunk down like CPU cores do. Productivity performance of this CPU is amazing, winning in almost everything versus the competition. In gaming performance, differences versus the giant Intel was almost removed, with differences in performance often being less than 3%. To add injury to the giant, AMD's price was and is still much lower than Intel. July 7, 2019, the Radeon 5000 series models 5700 and 5700 XT were released as upper mid-range.
When you look at Navi, we believe that it can power a tremendous number of applications. Just last month, Sony announced the first application of Navi. They announced that their next generation PlayStation is going to be powered by AMD with our semi-custom portfolio using Navi as well as our Zen 2 products.
These are gaming video cards that added competition to the gaming market with several new features, such as the very effective and performance-efficient Radeon image sharpening, also Radeon anti-lag for more responsive gameplay, and the new RDNA architecture.
RDNA is a gaming engine, the architecture that will power the foundation of gaming for the next decade. Navi has an all-new 7nm RDNA architecture, Radeon DNA. This is different from GCN. And Navi is also the world's first gaming GPU that has PCI Express Gen 4 enabled.
Now, if this wasn't enough already, on July 7th, 2019, AMD also announces the release of the X570 for sale. The X570 gives you more PCI Express bandwidth for graphics and for storage. AMD is the first to 4.0. August 7, 2019, the EPYC Rome server CPUs were released. These are new, faster Zen 2 cores. They are super fast while also being very power efficient.
Is 2x performance per socket. I've got to tell you, I've been in the semiconductor industry a long, long time. You don't get 2x. On the floating point, you heard from Mark. It's a double-double.
With these processors, AMD's received many design wins, which will certainly continue for some time to come, with up to 64 cores, 128 threads, with price, performance, and efficiency unmatched by anyone in the server market. The Rome server CPUs are real winners.
It has 8 core die. On each of those 8 core die, we have 8 CPUs, 8 Zen 2 CPUs. Each of those die are in 7 nanometer. In the middle, we have the 14 nanometer IO die. We did this for a reason. IO doesn't scale. IO doesn't scale, but IO is extraordinarily important. We want the IO in a mature technology.
AMD over the last 2 years also showed their security prowess, while the competition had to patch the exploits, losing much of the performance advantages it had remaining. AMD has only been making the pain worse with consistently improved performance. Ryzen and Athlon Pro processors are CPUs or APUs with a security coprocessor built in at the silicon level. This coprocessor adds DRAM memory encryption, as well as detects the BIOS to safeguard directly from boot. The Ryzen Pro comes in 2 forms. One form requiring a discrete graphics card, meaning you need to purchase an add-on card for your computer to display images. The other form is APU, which is a CPU with added-in graphics module built into one. October 7th, 2019, Advanced Micro Devices announced the RX 5500 GPU for both desktop and mobile.
We can't let up, we won't let up. And I couldn't be more pleased to share that as I committed, we always are working on the next designs while we're doing a current design. We're well along. In fact, we've completed the design phase of Zen 3. So Zen 3 is right on track. And we don't stop there, right? We already have our engineers in the works on Zen 4.
November 25th, 2019. AMD will release the Ryzen 9 3950X, available for the desktop with 16 cores and 32 threads. This same day, AMD will release the Ryzen Threadripper 3960X and the Threadripper 3970X. AMD 4000 series laptop processors. Now this was a giant leap in performance, and something AMD really needed to catch up to Intel. Now AMD has great server CPUs, great laptop CPUs, and great desktop CPUs. June 16th, 2020, AMD finally releases the long-anticipated B550 chipset. With this chipset, we now got much better quality, with manufacturers having much more confidence in the Ryzen processor. October 27, 2020, AMD makes the largest deal they have ever made in history, $35 billion in stock for the company Xilinx for their high performance and adaptive computing solutions. November 5, 2020, AMD releases the 5000 series of desktop processors. These processors actually exceed Intel's gaming performance. November 10th, 2020, the Xbox Series S and Series X is released, and the PlayStation 5 on November 12th. Both these systems use custom AMD processors and graphics. November 18th, 2020, AMD begins the release of the RDNA 2 graphics cards. With this release, it looks like AMD will be fighting a great battle with NVIDIA and Intel. Lisa Su and the team at Advanced Micro Devices have been fighting an intense battle like never before. Hopefully things keep on raging on and the consumer wins in the end. Now this concludes till 2020. Thank you for watching. Please consider leaving a like and subscribe to Not BIOS. Have yourselves a wonderful day.
This is Not BIOS, Tech and Hardware.